My name's George Burton. I was in the infantry in the Marine Corps from 2000 to 2005.
And what was your MOS?
I was an 0311 infantry scout I was with the 1st Light Armored Reconnaissance Battalion.
And where were you stationed at?
I was stationed at Camp Pendleton, San Diego, California.
So give me a little bit into how boot camp was for you.
Uh, when I first went into boot camp, I was an alcoholic before I went in. So I had like the shakes the first 3 days of boot camp. But after that, boot camp I was in pretty good shape, like physically, but boot camp, they don't really feed you as much. So I lost a lot of weight. And I wouldn't say boot camp was easy. Mentally, it was challenging, just because it was a long, drawn out thing. And they, sorry, it's been so long. I'm just trying to think back about how boot camp was. I think the hardest part about boot camp was not laughing, because there's a lot of things that were, because I kind of had a tough upbringing. So a lot of those guys were coming from middle of America, hadn't really seen a whole lot outside of just their normal family life. So it was like being next to a bunch of guys that were like the first night of boot camp, like you would hear people like sobbing, and I thought it was pretty funny. So like, and the drill instructors, they're trying to be really tough the whole time, but like in my head, I know they can't do anything like too terrible to me. So to me, it was just more of a game to get by without, try not to get in too much trouble. So it was kind of fun.
You mentioned having a tough upbringing. Can you go a little deeper into that, what that was like?
Yeah, I don't want to compare it to anybody else. It wasn't like that terrible, but I moved out of my house when I was like 16 years old. So, just I feel like I'm closer now with my parents than I was like as a teenager. So a lot of that stuff is like changed. But yeah, I just moved out of my house when I was 16. I was living in an apartment with a 2-bedroom apartment with like 11 other dudes. So, but I still did what I had to do, graduated high school, moved in with I moved in with one of my sisters my senior year of high school. She really helped me out a lot, kind of put me on the right track. And then I joined the Marine Corps.
Where did you grow up at?
My dad was in the Navy, so I was born in San Diego, but I never lived in the same place for more than like 4 or 5 years, so kind of all over the place. I would say mostly South Florida was like where I was like a teenager at.
So after boot camp, I'm guessing, go to your what we call in the Navy your A school, but your training.
Yeah, School of Infantry. Went to School of Infantry. That was a lot of fun. Not as hard as everybody like makes it seem to be. You're just carrying a lot of weight, a lot of distance, and doing just basic infantry stuff. So it's kind of fun.
What had, let's wait for that to pass. What had, oh, sorry. Cool. What motivated you to not only join the Marines, but to become, or to go the route of infantry?
Well, ever since I was a little kid, I watched a lot of Vietnam movies. So I actually wanted to be a Navy SEAL growing up. My dad was in the Navy. But then when I was in high school, I met a Navy SEAL, and he was kind of overweight and kind of lazy. And then I met some recon Marines, and they were like, that's like who I wanted to be. And so I just decided, like, it's like a last minute thing. I was almost going to join the Navy and go the Navy SEAL route, but then just by the off chance of meeting some Marines that I really thought that I would fit in better with them.
After infantry school, what were your orders? Where did you get sent to?
So I got sent to 1st Light Armored Recon Battalion, and I was only in my unit for about a month, and that's when September 11th happened. So then it was just getting ready to go overseas, and then I deployed with Operation Enduring Freedom for my first deployment, then came back, and then then we worked up for the invasion of Iraq. And I was there for the initial invasion of Iraq.
What was the military like during September 11th after that event had occurred?
Man, I think the whole world changed. And so when I came in, my friends that I had met that were in the Marine Corps before me, they were kind of bummed because they did a whole 4 years in the Marines and they never really got to do anything like Marine Corps related. Like they went overseas, but they didn't really ever get deployed to. They didn't get to do anything like that they thought they would. And then as soon as September 11th happened, it was like we knew that we were gonna do what we signed up to do, and then we did.
What are some things that you remember from that first day getting to Iraq in terms of smell, taste, sounds?
Well, we were in Kuwait for about a month before for working up for it. So I remember it being just super hot, and I was really close. Like we were a really close group of Marines by then. So we'd already gone through all the workups, already gone through one deployment together. So it was kind of like felt like we were about to play the big game, and I was like on a really strong team.
That's a great way to put that. How did you get to Kuwait? Over boat, aircraft?
Yeah, we took a ship over there, if I remember correctly. Yeah, we took a ship on the way over there.
What was the living situation like in Kuwait?
When we were in Kuwait, we just lived in these really big tents, really smelly, bunch of Marines. It just living on top of a bunch of other savages in really hot temperatures. It's kind of wild, but that's why you have young men do it, because they don't care.
Mm-hmm. What was the difference between Kuwait and getting to Iraq?
Well, Kuwait, it was just the waiting game. We didn't know exactly when we were gonna launch, but we were just like waiting for that call. And then I remember the day that we were supposed to go, it was just like, all right, it's time to go. And we were going, we like went to our staging area. I was in the lead vehicle, the lead element that was across the border. And our battalion were the Highlanders. So they played bagpipes over speakers on the way over. And that's the most pumped up I've ever been to do anything. Yeah.
So walk me through that. The bagpipes are playing. You guys are driving over the border. How did that first few days go?
So we had a lot of objectives set out that we were supposed to hit, a lot of gas oil separators. We were supposed to take control of to make sure that they didn't blow them up before we got there. So we had a bunch of set missions that we were supposed to accomplish, and we didn't think we were going to be able to get through it as fast as we did. So it was just a super high pace of hitting targets and moving on to the next one, and hitting targets and moving on to the next one. So it was a lot of chaos, but yeah, we were successful.
At this point, for these objectives, was there any combat, or was it pretty straightforward?
Pretty light, pretty minimal resistance, mostly catching people off guard, and then them, if they shot at us, we would return fire, and then they would give up, mostly.
At this point, were you scared at all?
No, I made peace with the fact that I was probably going to die, so I was just going to do what I could to like. I didn't really care about me. I was trying to make sure that my junior Marines were going to come back.
After those objectives were taken and you guys sort of set foot past the border, what was the next mission? What was the next move?
Oh man, it's been 20 years, so it was I don't remember exactly. I just remember it was just a long convoy of up through cities to Baghdad. So my unit operates about 20 miles ahead of the rest of the division, and we just make sure that, you know, the route is clear, and if we're going to be able to get tanks through different places. So we were just pushing ahead and finding the route for the rest of the division to come in behind us. So I was an E4. I was a section leader, so I had probably like 13 Marines under me, and so I knew what we were doing, but I didn't really have a scope of what the big picture was. I just knew if we needed to go down this block, that we'd have to clear down this block. I didn't really have a big picture at all.
Driving that far ahead of everybody else, it seems like you're kind of out there, you know, on your own and having to figure things out before the rest of them do. Are there any specific memories that stand out to you driving through those cities and those towns and clearing the routes beforehand?
Yeah, the farther south we were, I feel like we were greeted as like liberators, and people were really excited to see us. And then even through Baghdad, we really came across people that were really happy to see us. But then as we got after Baghdad, we went up to Tikrit, which was Saddam's hometown. And like there, everybody, I feel like Saddam paid for like all the doctors to go to school, paid for all the lawyers to go to school. So I feel like they had kind of a skewed view on even what was going on within their own country. So I feel like there we met like way more resistance around Saddam's hometown.
And when you say resistance, you know, what exactly are you referring to?
Well, ambushes, and then just people not happy to see us. People like, so we went and secured an army hospital that was on our. We were tasked to go and just secure the army hospital, check it out, make sure there wasn't any. I think it was the Mujahideen that we were fighting at that time, making sure that everything was clear around there, and there was a civilian hospital across the street. And so we went and talked to the main doctor that was there, and he said he didn't want us around, that we need to just stay over at the army hospital. And we said, okay, but if anything happens, we're not gonna like risk our lives, because like now is the time for us to secure it. We're not gonna be able to come out here in the middle of the night and risk all of our lives if that's what's gonna happen, because everyone started looting everywhere. And that's exactly what happened that night. Was as we pulled our lines back where he was exposed, looters came and just ransacked his hospital, and we couldn't really help him. It was yeah, but it's like that I think the conversation with that doctor really shed a lot of light on what his perspective of us being there was. And
You mentioned being ambushed. What? I mean, how many were you? Was it quite often that happened?
yeah, the route that we led up through, they nicknamed Ambush Alley, so that we got ambushed quite a bit. But they learned to not ambush the Marines, because if they ambush us, we'll stop at nothing to assault through them. But a lot of the other units, like the Army units, they would get shot at and just kind of like not care about it. But we took it personally.
So walk me through maybe like what your first ambush was like, or one that you can remember the most.
Probably the one I remember the most is we were clearing through a street of buildings, and we got right to the last building, and we got a call over the radio that one of the recon units was pinned down, and we have a lot of firepower with us, so we were going to go help them out. And the last house that we hadn't yet cleared through kind of had a vantage point down the road that if they had like any kind of firepower in there, like anybody crossing the road would be in a lot of trouble. And so they were trying to pull us out and get us on the vehicles and load us up immediately. And I said, no, we got to hit this last house. And it turned out that that last house had an anti-aircraft gun pointed straight down the street. And then, so we cleared through there, and luckily I stuck to it and was like, no, we need to clear this.
What's the tension like when you're going through these? I know from pictures and videos I've seen that a lot of these streets are very narrow and the buildings are stacked on top of each other. What's the tension and stress like clearing through those?
It's almost like too much to handle, so it becomes numb. Like there's so much to pay attention to that you just kind of take it like one step at a time.
Did you pray?
No. Before we would go on patrols, I would let the guys that were religious, say a prayer, and we would all say goodbye to each other. But I'm not a religious man at all, so I wouldn't pray, but we would have that moment.
How would you describe the feeling when you first hear gunfire from the opposition?
Rage. Yeah. It's very personal. They're trying to end you, so I would just focus it back at them.
What was the withdrawal from Iraq like for you?
What do you mean from, like, when I came back home from it, or when?
Yeah, when you came back home, was the U.S. pulling out of Iraq as a whole, or was that was just the end of your orders?
That was just the end of my deployment. We turned over our positions and then it was weird. got on a plane, flew to Frankfurt, Germany, was just there for like a day, and then flew to March Air Force Base. And then it went from, it was a really weird shift in life.
Would you say it was relieving, or did it feel like something was missing?
I don't know. Definitely relieved. It took a good 3 weeks to just finally like being back to be relaxed, whatever. But yeah, it was. I don't even know how to explain it. It's just like being worried all day about everything that could kill you, and then all of a sudden nothing is really that big. Like people aren't actively trying to kill you anymore, so what do you do with all that extra, like, mind, like, I don't know, mental power?
Yeah, you use it for jiu-jitsu now.
Yeah. When I first got out of the Marine Corps, I moved back to South Florida, and I started selling insurance. And I was really good at it, and I was making really good money, but I was like working in an office with a bunch of people that I didn't really have a whole lot of respect for, but they were the biggest shit talkers, but I couldn't really do anything about it. So I kind of, for their safety and my own safety, I packed up my stuff and moved to Vegas and pursued my fighting career.
What has stuck with you the most from Iraq?
I think not just Iraq, but just the Marine Corps in general is the camaraderie. I really miss that. I mean, I have it like you have it in jiu-jitsu, you have it in all these different martial arts gyms, and everybody's like cool to be a part of a team, and that's awesome, and that's the biggest thing I miss. But it like in the Marine Corps, you're playing for keeps. Like, it's real.
In total, how long were you in the Middle East?
Less than a year, probably like 10 or 11 months for the invasion. Yeah. My first deployment was only 6 months, and we did a lot more recon and scouting than we did any kind of trigger pulling. We did like one ambush, and that was it.
What was that ambush like?
It's weird.
We got the other end of it.
Yeah. I was still real young, so.
And when you're fighting in Iraq, is it the Taliban you're fighting, or who is it exactly that you guys are going against for the most part?
It was the Mujahideen, is from my understanding. But we actually, it was actually a lot of Jordanians and Syrians, stuff like people coming from other countries to attack us.
How would you describe the way that they fought?
Not very well. A lot of taking shots at us, and then us seeing where they are, and then them just like lifting their rifles out of the hole and just spraying sporadically at us while we're just like watching them. Like, okay, I see you, buddy.
Were there any times that seemed like you might not be coming home, or that were a little closer than what was comfortable?
Yeah.
After being in Iraq and in the invasion, what's your view now on the military and on war in general?
Yeah. So when I was in, I didn't pay attention to the world news on purpose, because I knew it didn't matter what I thought about it. I still had a job to do, so I didn't want that to affect what I was doing. But it just now that that's not my job anymore, it really affects me when people make the decision to send people to war without really thinking about it, about the true costs, or not caring about the true costs.
How has your life changed now, being able to be as involved in jiu-jitsu here at Purebred as you are now?
Man, I love it here. It's a family here. We have such a eclectic group of people, but it's a real family feel, and everybody's helping each other to get better.
Cool. Thank you so much, George. I appreciate you taking the time. Thank you for your service. I know it's not the easiest to speak about, so
Yeah.
I think you did a great job.
Thanks, man.